The bulk of the charges, I would just note, have to do with multiple pre-mixed bottles of alcohol, which is your typical sangria charge, just extensive, and we recognize it's extensive.
Well, the only reason that's the bulk of the charges is because we don't have a charge that really fits in to almost killing multiple doctors because we serve them poison.
So,
if there was a charge for that, you would have multiple charges.
So, Mr. Chairman, the impetus of these charges, you're correct, was there were reports of contaminated liquor, and that's what led to the inspection of the premises by the authority and by the health department.
Well, now, let's be honest, they're not reports. These people ended up in the hospital from this location. 7 medical doctors.
No doubt that people were in the hospital, Mr. Chairman, not disputing that. The only point that I'm trying to make is that the health department did collect samples of the bottles that they believed were responsible and contaminated, and they never tested, or their tests never came back as conclusive of contamination.
Well, the emergency room physician claimed that every one of their symptoms was consistent with poisoning.
Understood.
So, unless they were poisoned at some party they all went to before they went to that bar, because apparently all 7 drank the same drink at the location.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think what you're raising really goes to the core of the requirement that alcohol be kept in its original containers, and that is, the potential for contamination is, I think, one of the policy justifications underlying that requirement, and I think that is why that was charged so many times for each and every one of the bottles that they had pre-mixed. And they immediately put an end to the use of those bottles, which they had used as pre-mixed cocktail bottles. It's not legal, and unfortunately, a lot of folks do it. It's not legal. Their use was extensive, and a stop has been made to that.
Why are they still adding CBD to their cocktails?
Well, Mr. Chairman, as you may know, there for a while, especially around the time that these charges were brought, there was a lack of clarity in the industry, even amongst the city's own health department, as to whether the additive of CBD was legal or not. The city had given inconsistent advice on that. The federal government ultimately stepped in and said it could not be added.
I think the federal government was pretty consistent that it could not be added without approval.
Well, it was actually, Mr. Chairman, it was not clear until the federal government came out and the FDA came out and said that since they had approved CBD for the use of, I believe it was a narcolepsy drug, it therefore, by definition, could not be added to food anymore. But that was a fairly recent development at the time. The city was insistent on it, and they've stopped using it.
Are you now admitting that your client actually serves CBD, because that's never actually been admitted?
I'm not sure if they served CBD or not. It certainly wasn't in the charges. I'm just responding to the general point about...
so why don't you ask your client? He's standing right there.
Well, I'm not sure, again, Commissioner Fan, if the additive of CBD was in the charges.
Can you ask your client or not ask your client?
I mean, it was in count 34, Rocky Mountain High CBD cocktails. That's a pre-mixed cocktail that he's charged with pre-mixing.
Mr. Chairman,
he says she's correct. He said to our investigator he never sold the drink. However, we got evidence that the night of the poisoning, 12 of them were sold based on their sales receipt records.
Mr. Chairman, all I could say about that was during this time there was widespread. It was
Mr. Brooklyn, this has nothing to do with the federal government. This has to do with the credibility of your client who showed up here, but we're asking him a question and you won't let him answer.
The only reason for that, Commissioner Fan, is because since this is a conditional no contest offer, we are admitting the charges. And I think the Chairman did accurately point out, and thank you, that there is a charge regarding that drink, Rocky Mountain High. And so we are admitting that. The only point I'm trying to make is that...
Then you just needed to say yes.
Well, all right.
Say yes.
Say yes.
Yes, I heard what you had to say, Commissioner Fan.